Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. I'm Jenny Hall. Thanks for joining me for another tutorial. Today I have a nice Easter card that I am going to be watercoloring. To start the process, I'm using Easter Message Stamp Set. I'm using some watercolor paper and I will be heat embossing the image, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do that with regular stamp pad. I'm not using any of the Versamark ink. I'm just using my regular dye ink from Stampin' Up. I have Early Espresso ink pad. I want to have the image really juicy onto the stamp, and that's going to be able to allow that liquid to be heat embossed. It will hold all that powder. So I have everything ready, and that way as soon as I take the stamp away from the paper, then I can put the powder onto the wet ink and it's just going to soak it up. So this is one way that you can get a stamp and embossed image that's going to hold the watercoloring really well, and you don't have to take the extra step of applying Versamark ink on top of your regular colored ink. It's just another way to do the embossing. There's a lot of different ways that people approach doing this process, and you can use exactly what works best for you. My purpose was to be able to show you just another way that you can use your crafting supplies to a minimum and be able to get the result that you might be looking for. Here I am using a water brush and the regular same stamp pad that I did for the initial stamping. I am diluting the ink as it goes onto the image because I want to be able to have more of a concentrated ink on certain portions. Like where the different wooden beams of the cross meet, there will be a shadow effect. And for me to be able to get that shadow effect, then I need to be able to concentrate the dye ink in those areas versus the areas of the wooden cross that would catch the light. So those areas were actually made with a diluted color versus the stronger direct color that were on those shadow areas of the cross. Here is Pear Pizzazz, and as you can see, I have also diluted the Pear Pizzazz pretty good because I want to have more than one hue, and there's going to be some areas of concentrated color, but I always try to start light with watercoloring. I can certainly put more on, but it's not as easy to take away all of that color. It can be done by wetting your paper and then using a dry towel to damp up some of it. However, once I get the look onto the paper, I don't want to have the fuss with having to go back. Another plus with adding color in layers is you get a different type of a look. It's a more organic, natural look, and it kind of shows out in floods of color and flows of color, which this is something that I like in my projects. Some people prefer to have just a very flat, matte, one wash looking puddle, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's very attractive, but it wasn't the look that I am going for in today's project. What I am trying to achieve today is I'm starting with a light color in a whole wash of area, and then I'm going back with the concentrated, less watered down portion of the ink to go and just kind of dab it directly over the areas that I want to be darker. And then what's going to happen is as that is soaking into the paper and drying, then I will go back in a little closer to the center of the cross and I will make it even darker. So what the result's going to give me is shade upon shade upon shade of this exact same green color. And it will be more concentrated the more color is going to be holding onto the paper. So that's the great thing with using watercolor paper for card making projects, is that we can get a little bit more flexible with the different ways of coloring. And the purpose of this demonstration today is that I wanted to show that you can do watercolor and make it really, really easy by just dabbing the water brush into your stamp pad. And with the addition of the heat embossing, that is it turns to plastic and it acts as a wall in between the areas that are embossed and not embossed. So it's like a levee, if you want to use a technical term of maybe like a levee, to where it is not going to let the green ink flood into the areas that are protected by the stamp and embossed image. It's a very good tool to use in watercoloring for me, because it allows me to not have to pay really, really close attention to whether I'm going to let the green flood into the areas that are supposed to be brown. And this is a little bit of Soft Sky ink, and it's kind of an afterthought that I didn't plan to color in the scarf that is draped across the cross. However, in the church that we attend, they do have the paraments are colored white for Easter, and when you have white, especially on a piece of white paper, and it doesn't have any shading at all, it doesn't look natural to me. So I thought I needed to go in with a very soft color that would be something of a shadow. I considered using gray, but it really it didn't look like it was going to go for me. So I thought, well, the palest blue that I have will work just in the shadow areas. So you can see that I'm not using a very high concentration of Soft Sky. I'm just using a little bit of the watered down ink down into the areas that are the natural folds of the cloth. So it's not going to come away with giving me that this is a blue cloth draped on the cross, because that would be Christmas and not Easter, at least in my church. So I wanted to just give the look of white, but with shadows. So this is just another way. Now in your crafting, you may come across something that's much better at creating shadows, and if you do, then I would appreciate it very much if you would share it with me and with everybody in the comments, because that's one way that we're able to do great things and share with one another. I have an additional piece of chocolate chip ink, and I have, as you can see, I have re-inked my Versamark. It is really juicy, and that's good because I want to make sure that when I use the embossing powder that there is lots and lots of that juicy ink to stick to the powder, and it helps me to be able to get a really good coverage of that embossing powder onto the cardstock. I'm using a coffee filter to catch all of that embossing powder, and that is a little trick. If you guys haven't used it, maybe it will help you in your crafting. I decided to add some texture to this otherwise low textured card by using linen thread and going over the area that was already stamped as being held together like with a rope. On the intersection of the beams of the cross. I thought that would just be a little something extra. This is more of a I would want to call it maybe a no frills card. There's not going to be doilies or sequins. I wanted to convey the seriousness and the thought-provoking emotions that I feel at Easter time. And I wanted to add something a little extra to the project without actually going, I'll use the word foo-foo. Sometimes in my house we say foo-foo. You know, it's a little too fancy. I didn't want it to be a little too fancy. There's no Easter eggs, there's no bunnies, nothing like that. This is just a pretty serious card for me. So I wanted to just add a little something, and I secured that linen thread down by using washi tape on the back of the card. Now here's the sentiment for the inside of the card, and I'm using the same ink but in a lesser generation. That's the early espresso, and this is another image from the stamp set. And whenever I am adhering the inner portion, I usually just use a couple of dots of the Tombow liquid glue, and that's enough to keep it down in a couple of different spots. Snail adhesive works really good as well. Thank you guys for joining me for another card tutorial. I appreciate your support, and I thank you so much for being subscribers. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.
Hi, my name is Trip. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time.